you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out. I'm really gratified that I've found enough people to be interested in this particular subject to come out on a not too nice night. But I want to tell you a little bit about the website. I gave you all a card and it'll tell you how to get into the website. The website came about because I always had an interest, being an architect, in the Art Deco aspects of the Bronx, and I've lived in the Bronx since 1985, and that kind of put me closer to it. And over the years, it became a thing. You know, everybody knows, oh, there's Art Deco in the Bronx. And you say, well, where is it? And they all say, well, it's on the Grand Concourse. And so that's really the extent of most people's knowledge. And it's true. There's a lot of great Art Deco on the Grand Concourse. And some of it is actually acknowledged to be important in our history. And they formed a Grand Concourse Historic District in 2011, I think it was. And then it included many buildings in the Art Deco style, but it included many other buildings in all kinds of other styles which preceded it and came after it. So it covers all of the history of architecture in the Bronx, but the Art Deco features very strongly in that. And then outside of that, there are a couple of individual buildings which are great examples of Art Deco architecture, which are individually landmarked. But beyond that, there are a whole host of really wonderful Art Deco buildings in the Bronx which are not landmarked. And it became an obsession of mine to kind of make a record of them. And I started in about 2005. This was when my kids were kind of young. And we didn't have kind of phone cameras, and I had these early digital cameras, and they ended up on disc somewhere, and I thought I'd lost them at one point. And then my kids got older, and I was able to spend a little bit more time. And then becoming a parent and taking care of business, I didn't do anything for about 10 years until basically I retired, which was in about 2018. And I figured, well, now let me start putting together a website of all of the photographs that I'd taken over the years. And I wasn't kind of too enthused. I was kind of working towards it and trying to put them in files and stuff. And I came across one of the buildings that we're going to look at tonight. And this is to dispel a myth about all of the great Art Deco buildings in the Bronx or the West Bronx. And most of them are in the West Bronx. But if you'd like to take a look at this map here, you'll see that I drew like a blue line. And to the right of that is where we are. We're in the East Bronx, and to the left of it is the West Bronx. And you can see every one of those little things is an Art Deco building. And it makes it look like the whole of the Bronx is Art Deco, but that's, you know, there are pockets where you can go, look in every direction and see Art Deco buildings, but they are evenly spread out throughout the Bronx. And you'll see that there are quite a lot to the right of this line. There's a concentration around Pelham Parkway, and there's some up on the Bronx Park East, and there's one all the way down in the South Bronx here. And we're going to take a look at some of the best examples along that line, just to show you some of the really great Art Deco buildings that there are in the East Bronx. So let's start. We're going to start right at the top of Webster Avenue. This is 529th Street. It's a couple of blocks before you get to the Yonkers line. And this is an example of what in the website I have described as the sawtooth Art Deco style. And that's because in this style, the architects, and there are several, unfortunately tonight this is the only example we have of this, but in the website you will find that I have made collections of various different styles. And if you want to see all of the art, the sawtooth deco style, you can select it in the search engine and you can find all different varieties of this style. And this is where the architect folds the facade to give it all kinds of interest and to give them a chance to put in what is a really signature feature of a large number of Art Deco buildings, which is the corner window. This has corner windows at the corner. It has corner windows in the middle of one of the folds, and as you go round the corner, I'm not quite sure we can get another view of that. This is the entrance, which is kind of very nice glass block and simple brick patterning. Can we get a view of the, yes, right. As you go round the corner, you'll see the facade becomes straight again, and you get these rows of corner windows that face each other, which is much more the standard way that Art Deco architects handled the corner window in those days. And then you get the different variations of the brick colors, and at the top you get this kind of very delicate brick patterning, and it kind of changes every time he changes the angle. Keeps your eye involved. And then, can we get the plan? I think I did, this one here has one of the plans that shows okay, this one here, yeah. All right, so this is how, why we call it the sawtooth deco. If you look at the plan and how he bends it in and out, it kind of looks like the edge of a sawtooth if you're looking down on it. And in some of the more classic examples, the folds are even, so you get a rhythm. But this one here, he kind of changes up on them. All right, so now on the inside, this has got a really terrific lobby. This is a fabulous lobby. If this were on Park Avenue, you would be proud of it. This is fabulous book-matched marble in that really great brownish color. They've done a terrazzo to match it in there, and this wonderful lighting, and it's a fabulous building, and it's great, and it's in great condition. And if the city came along and told this guy, you've got to rip the top of your building because it's not safe, it wouldn't be protected, because this is not one of the great Art Deco buildings in the Bronx, which I think is good enough to be landmarked. And if you look in the website, I have a separate collection of all of the buildings. Amongst the 350 or so which are in the website, there's about 80 or so which I think are of good enough quality and are in close to their original condition, and which they would merit the landmarking, and this is one of them. Okay.
Is the fireplace functional?
No, there's no fireplace in this lobby. Oh, yes, there is. I'm sorry. What am I talking about? The fireplace is quite traditional for a Deco fireplace. No, I'm thinking of another building. The other buildings down on the Bronx part. Yeah. So the fireplaces are always fake. They never work.
Okay.
And some of them, they let you know it. And some of them kind of try to hide it here by putting in an andiron here or something. But it's just a kind of a design feature.
Yeah.
All right, so I just wanted to show you these pictures here. During the course of putting the website together, I discovered there are all kinds of terrific resources available to me for nothing. And these are photographs which were available from the New York City Municipal Archive. And this young man over here raised his hand.
Yes.
Does he represent the Municipal Archive?
I was a commissioner of the Department of Records. I ran the Municipal Archives.
Okay, well, if you were
they're
involved
now
in this,
to you because I got them digitized.
Then you deserve a round of applause. So, can I, you'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Good.
Okay, so apparently they wanted to put, under the Works Progress Administration, they wanted to put people to work who couldn't get a job, and it wasn't just people in trades, it was people in creative or other areas. And they wanted to put photographers to work. And this coincided with a plan in the New York City Tax Department to make a record, a photographic record of every plot, every building on every lot in every borough. And so they put together armies of photographers. They seemed to me to work in teams. One would hold a little placard which would identify the plot and lot, and the other guy would take the photograph. And not only are some of their photographs wonderful, and they show this building in its existing condition with the original small pane steel windows. It shows the canopy is about the only thing that's different. That canopy originally looks to me as if it was a piece of nice shiny stainless steel. They're a time capsule. These were taken between 1939 and 1941, is it?
Perfect.
So this is at the time when these buildings would have been already 3 or 4 years old. What date do we claim this building?
Oh, it's later. I think this is 1939.
All right. So this building is only a couple of years old when these photographs were taken, and it was great then, and it's great now. Okay. So that's, and we've been able to, that resource has been really important to the website, because where we can show, how deleterious it is to kind of mess with the facades of these buildings, and we can, sometimes these photographs are the only record of what they look like. All right, so this is Bronx Boulevard. We're coming down further south. This is an example of the emerging style of Art Deco. It's not flashy like some of the later ones. It's quite modest, but it has a lot of the elements which later became developed as part of the style. And it has this vertical emphasis. The first thing to say about Art Deco is that it's essentially the first modern style to ditch all of the classical architectural ornamentation that we used to put on our buildings, that dated from the Greeks and the Romans, and then there was Neo-Gothic and Gothic Revival and Tudor Revival. All those historical styles used to be used in ornamenting buildings. And Art Deco was a modern style. It wasn't modern in the sense that it got rid of all decoration like modern architecture did eventually. It still had it still wanted to have a decorative element, but even those elements were modernistic. They were kind of abstract. They didn't relate to anything that had gone before. And if you look at the vertical elements here in this building, you'll see that the emphasis is just done with the brick, and there's a vertical brick pattern at the corners and in the middle. And then under the roof you get these nice agglomerations. I don't know whether we can go to that little roof detail here. This is what is the beginning of the Art Deco style in basically abstract forms, geometric forms. And this stepped form is kind of like a mini skyscraper. This is the stepping that you get on the early classical Art Deco skyscrapers that were stepped. And this is the miniature form of it that you could do in brickwork and simple cast stone pinnacles. And the brick patterning that you get above and below the windows, the vertical emphasis of the brick colors. These essentially were elements of the early Art Deco style. And can we just go back to that first one where we show the... Okay, so here's here it is. This is the tax photo. It's exactly the same except for those really nice awnings. I don't know why people don't use awnings anymore. This is something that you have found. Is that correct, Brad?
Yeah, this is in trying to find out some of the architects for these buildings, which.
Oh, just
sometimes you
before I
can't
go,
find.
this is Brandon
Mitchell. Yeah.
Mitchell. I said this is Brandon Mitchell, who has become an associate in the workings of the website, and we kind of connected through the website. And he is starting to unearth all kinds of additional information, which is vital to what it stands for. And I think this is one of them, which he scours the records of the New York Times in strange corners, and he comes up with all kinds of information. And it's great.
So just to say is, yeah, like, I found a few buildings that I didn't see in the website, and I thought, there's something here. And so aside from finding some that aren't on the website yet, I wanted to figure out if we can figure out some of the architects that are unidentified. It turns out the New York Times used to publish announcements of every new building that was being filed. And if you go back through those archives, you can often find something like this, where it says Franklin, Bates, and Hindman as architects. It matches up with the building.
Oh, that's
It's
true.
not 100% every time, but
Yeah.
it's a good resource.
So this is great. This is a name which is new to me, but there is another building which we're going to look at later, which is very similar, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were by the same architect. So this has if you look at the entrance and the stonework around the entrance, this is normally, you would have kind of classical columns or something with a pediment here, and these are kind of basically abstract cast stone around the entrance. And then if you come into the lobby, it's a modest little building, but if you get into the lobby, this is the floor, this is the foyer to the lobby, and you'll see the plaster around that ceiling light. It's very classical Art Deco style. The stepping up and outwards, it's kind of like, it's an aspirational thing, and again, it's a little mini skyscraper. And it becomes a pattern which is used over and over again. And if you get into the lobby, it's a similar pattern in the terrazzo. That's a really cool terrazzo floor. And if you look at sometimes I couldn't get into the lobby, so I had to take a picture through the glass, and you get strange reflections. And it actually turns out nice. But this large light in the middle is the ceiling of the lobby. And it tries to match the pattern of the lobby. And if you look in the corner, there's a little plaster triangular thing coming out at 45 degrees, which is mirrored in the floor pattern in the terrazzo. And that's why, I think, can you go back to there? You can see that same little pattern in the corner. And that's why these buildings they date from the early 1930s, and you can see that they've been respected by the people that own them and live in them. They're still in good shape. And in a sense, people like that are their own preservation society, if you like. But you never know, then the people who've taken care of this building might want to sell it, and somebody comes along and they don't care. And then these buildings, modest as they are, they're great examples of an important style which didn't last very long, because by the time the war started, it was all over. But these were new forms of housing for an emerging lower middle and working class of a very high standard. These buildings were built to an advanced code. They had to have refrigerators and stoves. They had to have hot and cold water. They had to have sufficient ventilation, and they're still useful housing today. Apart from the fact that they're great architecture. Okay, so where are we now? I think we can move on to the next one. So this is you know, I told you kind of I started, I stopped, and I started. This is the building that really got me started to do this, put together this website seriously. And it occurred in 2021, and I had been retired a couple of years, and I was kind of doing, you know, discovering more buildings, but I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do. And I saw this building, which I'd known for many years. And I think I took the first photograph of this building in 2007. This is a building that you see if you go across Gun Hill Road, just before you come to White Plains. And it stands out amongst all the other buildings. It's a great example of classic Art Deco style. It has corner windows, it has fire escapes which the railing is curved, it has brick patterning in vertical and horizontal styles, and it has decorative cast stone at the parapet. And we'll see, I think I've got a close-up of one of these. These are fins, and these are kind of the aspirational, modernistic style expressed in the brickwork and the stone at the top. And it's a really great classic, what I in the website call classic Bronx Deco. Has all the attributes. And this is, again, this is another resource, not yours. But this is a resource from the Columbia University has a great architecture library, the Avery Library, and they have a collection of real estate brochures from the 20s and 30s. And this is from that collection. Again, it's available to the public. And it shows the building as it was when they first built it. And I don't know whether you can see at the top left-hand corner, there's a banner hanging from the parapet, and it listed the sizes of the apartments that were available to rent. So 2.5 rooms, 3.5, 1 rooms. And so that was during the rental period. And can you bring up that list of, here, all right, so this is part of the blurb, describes all of the wonderful modern appliances and devices that come, and it lists a handball court and a gymnasium. And I'm thinking, well, where the hell did that? Where did that end up? I could see they might have had a little gym in the basement, but where do you put a handball court? But it didn't show up on any of the real estate plans. And this is the plan. This gives you an idea of the kinds of apartments. And you know, you probably all heard, you know, all of these Art Deco buildings, the apartments had sunken living rooms. Well, they weren't sunken. They were 2 steps, and mostly they were 1 step. And they were just a way of delineating the area which most people lived in. But they weren't necessarily the best area to be a living room. And people frequently now use them as bedrooms. They were efficient. This is the lobby. Again, this has classic Art Deco decoration. This zigzag pattern that you see around the edge of the terrazzo there, that is a key pattern in Art Deco decoration. That kind of almost that strike of electricity that is characteristic. The plaster work, unfortunately, the projector doesn't do the plaster work in this justice, but maybe we can get a closer look at some of the plaster work. So this is the fireplace, and this has this beautifully kind of etched Art Deco decoration in the middle. The lighting's not original, but there would have been those 2 sconces there, so it's not dissimilar to how it was. And the horizontal bands in the plaster work, they were to indicate mostly the horizontal banding. Today we call them speed bands or speed lines, and they were kind of like, to be modern, you had to have this horizontal lining in them. This is the detail in the plaster work. It's really quite delicate. It steps back. Again, another well-preserved lobby. This is the color, really nice. I don't know whether it would be possible to replicate half of the colors that they use with this terrazzo. And what you have to know about terrazzo is that it'll look the same as this in another 150 years. It's almost indestructible. And again, it's one of those things which will outlast a lot of the buildings. All right, so this is what happens. A landlord has a fire. Oh, and this gives you a close-up of those wonderful fins at the top of the building. All right, well, they unfortunately are not going to last very long because not only has he had a fire up there, but the city has all kinds of laws which forces landlords to have their facades inspected, and they have to do a report every 10 years. And one of the reasons why you see all the scaffolding around the base of buildings is the landlords have done this. They know they've got to do the work. They don't want to spend the money, but they're covered if they put a scaffold up, and people won't get hurt with the stuff that falls off their building. But mostly they end up putting new tops to the building. And here you see on the left is what the original Art Deco parapet looked like. It's a fabulous example of what you could do with very simple elements. And now this is what happens when you reduce it down to the simplest element at all. And you've effectively ruined a fabulous Art Deco building. And it was at that point that I said to myself, you better get started on your website. And so I finally got it launched in the spring of 24. And I've been kind of trying to get people interested in it. I'm so glad that you showed up tonight, because the more people who know about this, the more people might kind of be sympathetic to some of the things that I propose in this in the website. All right, so let's go on to the next building. So that's a sad building. All right, so now this is a building that if you're in the East Bronx, you probably all know about. This is the United Workers Co-op. This is phase 2 of it, and it's known locally as the Commie Coops. And it was founded in the late 20s by a group of radical garment workers who banded together, and they managed to find financing. And they built, covering like 2 square blocks on Bronx Park East. The first phase is just north of this, and is done in a kind of a mock Tudor style, very traditional. But it does have radical symbols etched into the classical style. Over the entranceways there, some of the doorways still have the hammer and sickle on them. But then the second phase, they wanted something more modern. And there was a young architect who was working with the original architects, who were called Springsteen and Goldhammer. And his name was Herman Jessor. And he came up with this very modernistic interpretation of advanced worker housing. And they were slightly less equipped than the housing that was being developed by the private market that we just looked at. But they were really well designed in terms of the open spaces. They had all of the latest appliances. They had communal laundries. They had daycare, pre-K. They had art classes. They had all kinds of social organizations. And it started with great hopes, but then eventually became very badly managed and ended up in private hands. But this was one of the very first Art Deco buildings in the Bronx to be landmarked, because they recognized how important it was in not only the architectural history, but the social history. And it doesn't fall very neatly into any of the categories, but it has a lot of the elements, the brick patterning, And if you look at the way that the facade is layered, the bricks kind of are layered, and they step up and they step down, but it's kind of irregular, and so it's abstract in the sense that it doesn't bear any relationship to any of the historical styles, and it's using brick in a very sculptural way, which was a feature of Art Deco. And the guy who wrote the report for the Landmarks Preservation Commission calls this style Northern European brick expressionism, and nowhere does he refer to it as Art Deco. And I disagree. I mean, I think that this is Art Deco architecture. Art Deco architecture takes many, many different forms, as we've already seen, and this is one of them. Again, it has the vertical elements, it has the cast stone elements, has the sculptural elements, and it's really actually in quite good condition. It's undergoing a renovation now, and since it's an individually landmark building, they've got to try and replicate the original stuff as much as they possibly can when they do it. Okay, so another great art, but this one's already landmarked, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, all right, so here's another kind of cautionary tale. So this looks like what was it, the 640 East Bronx, the first early Deco one that we looked at with the pinnacles. This is Mace Avenue, and this came about in a way that I hoped it would. When I put the website out there, people, they find it or they don't. Google didn't bring it up until it was up for nearly 18 months. Now if you Google it, a lot of stuff comes up, so I'm happy for that. But people found the website, and also I started to post on some of the social media sites. I started to post little collections on the Reddit social media site, and they have sites which are devoted to all kinds of interests and people of like, and they have an Art Deco site on Reddit. And I got to Lowell Cochran, and he alerted me to this building. And that's what I wanted the website to do. I wanted people to see the website, see what was it about, and say, I know a building that belongs in that website. So if you know of any buildings that should be in the website that are not, then let me know. Okay, so this is, again, an early, it has brick patterning, it has vertical emphasis, it has the beautiful, nice cornice with similar stonework. The stonework around the entrance is really nice. It looks kind of traditional, but it's not. These are more cubist forms than anything else. This is the foyer, really nice terrazzo. The zigzag pattern, which we spoke about earlier, is used a lot in the crown plaster molding, nicely. And then this is through the door. This is the lobby. And this is one of the best lobbies in the Bronx, in my opinion. This fireplace, fake as hell, but it's it's wonderful. You come home from work and you see that thing, it's got to make you feel good. And it evokes a skyscraper, the way it steps up like that, and it's got the zigzag pattern in the plaster around the top of it, and the nice fluting of the plaster either side of it, and the wall sconces, the way they light up the fireplace, the stepping, and the coffered ceiling around it. It's just beautiful. And then here you've got some Art Deco furniture with that kind of African type style base. And again, the zigzag plaster around the top. This is the lobby floor, which again I love. This is a purely abstract piece of design. None of these shapes are replicated anywhere across this thing. And so some very good interior designer worked with a very good terrazzo contractor to produce this very unique floor. It's fabulous. Okay, This is the stepping. This steps up and down to form that diamond. The parapet looks okay to me there, but apparently here again you get the stepping of the little pinnacles and the brick pattern emerging. And this is the tax, again the tax photo looking very similar with the fabulous awnings. That was before, and now they just ripped off the facade, the top of the facade. Again, the building was not landmarked, so the landlords could do whatever they like. Yes, sir.
I'm a building restoration contractor. I do masonry work.
Yeah.
And the owners very, very often want those pinnacles off.
Oh, I know.
Because they cause problems with leaks.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't disagree that there's a problem that has to be fixed.
Yeah, but they try to fix it the right way,
But you get there because you ignore it like 20 years ago when you really should have addressed it. You have to agree then that they don't do the maintenance they do. If they check their buildings since they were built, if they gave them a check over every 10 years and did some restoration and some pointing and some other work, they wouldn't be in such bad condition. And sometimes they are beyond repair. But you don't, there are times when you can kind of put something which is more interesting than what you do, even though you can't replicate it. So
The Bronx market has become the most affordable.
Yeah.
The most affordable contractors.
Yeah.
Not very qualified.
no.
You know, they just,
Okay, so that again, that's another sad story. And unfortunately, there are too many of them, and this is the last one I'm going to show you tonight. This again, this is Olinville Avenue. I can't remember what do I call this. I call this early Deco because it purports to be 1932, and it doesn't have corner windows, but it has a lot of brick patterning. And if you look at the photograph, that first photograph, go back. Let's go to the first one, I think. No, was it the next one? Yeah, this one. So at the top you can see the zigzag, and they've done the zigzag in brickwork, and the zigzag they'll put it wherever they can. It's a great device, and you'll see the various different forms of brick patterning that they have here, and these really strange brick. They're not semicircular, but they step in and out, and they've got this kind of finned look at the top of them, and it's to make them look modern. And they do. They look kind of quaintly modern today. And it's great. Inside, the landlords, this is the way they paint the lobbies because they're easier to keep clean with this horrible shiny paint. But the terrazzo is in great shape here. It wouldn't surprise me if the ceiling had molding at one time to match the floor, but it doesn't anymore. It's a great lobby. This again, I think somebody recommended to me that I go look over there in Olinville. This is not a very good tax photograph, but it does show how you had a parapet style on the left and one on the right, and then the middle section was the zigzag. And now this is what it looks like today. It's gone. That lovely zigzag is gone forever. All right, let's move right along. Let's see if we can find some good news. All right, now this is, I was raving about the first building that we looked at, the sawtooth one at the top of Webster Avenue, and I said that it, definitely should be landmarked. But this one actually surpasses it in demand to be landmarked. This is a fabulously well-preserved example of a classic Bronx Art Deco building, which I think it fills an entire block, doesn't it, Brandon? 601 Pelham Parkway North. And this is the entrance, and this is glazed terracotta tile, all handcrafted from some designer's Um, Probably it was the designers made them in clay or plaster, and then they would make a cast that could be cast in fireable clay, and then they would come up with ways of glazing them, and they would make incredible things. And I think there's a close-up of the...
Not for a while.
no, not for a while. Okay, so let's go in.
Wall Street.
The entrance, all right, so now we're going in.
Bronx Park East.
Bronx Park, okay.
So these are, unfortunately, these are lousy photographs. These were taken before I had an eye camera, and they're not very well developed. But do you have some more recent ones? Okay,
One of
all
them.
right, so
Yes,
here we
first
go.
of all.
So this is where Bradford lives, and he's lucky. So I don't know whether you can see the intricacy of that kind of, it's kind of like isn't it a vase with water falling out of it?
Something kind of Aztec.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. And those kind of mythical animals sticking out. All right, so this is the lobby. This is the minimal fake fireplace, streamlined. It's just a kind of an elegant little recess in the wall, but there it is. You've got to have a fake fireplace. Is this mosaic?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a fabulous piece of... it's a landscape. It's a mythical landscape. It's just wonderful.
Is that tile?
It's mosaic. Again, some period furniture. This stepping would happen vertically and horizontally, so that you would step the wall in and out to give it interest. Yeah, let's see some of the outside, because it's really... All right, so this is a really great tax photograph. And you know what I like about these tax photographs, anybody who likes old cars, they can have a lot of fun identifying them.
There's no traffic either.
Um,
And parking.
This must have been soon after it was built. Looking great with the original windows. And now, I think there's a shot there which is almost identical.
I don't think we have one.
No? I can't believe it. I thought I did. All right, well, we're done. There you go. It has, and they must have disappeared somewhere. What's important about this building is that it fills the whole block. It has its original parapet. The lobby is in fantastic condition, and I think that it's a co-op, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they have their destiny in their own hands. They can't, they can't turn around and blame it on the landlord. And people who live in these Art Deco buildings cherish them. There's a building in Marble Hill, which is in my website, which had the old original steel windows, small pane windows. And it was unique. It was the last Art Deco building in the Bronx practically to have its original windows. And the landlord started to put in these nasty new up and down light windows. And the tenants were absolutely outraged. They all said, I moved here for these windows. And so people care. But unfortunately, the people with the power don't. Here we go. All right. So unfortunately, we don't have any of the outside. So this is going to force you to go and look at the building. Or actually, you can look at it in the website. When you go into the website, it's very easy to manipulate. There's a search page. And if you want to know whether a building that you think is an Art Deco building, you just have to type the address in the address bar. And if it's in the archive and it's Art Deco, it'll come up. If it doesn't, slightly not an Art Deco building. But then you can search the website. You can get all the buildings that are designed by certain architects, and that shows you how they develop their styles or how they vary the styles. You can get all of the early Deco buildings if you want to compare them. You can get all of the classic Bronx Deco buildings. You can search it in many ways. And it also lists the official documents that the Landmarks Preservation Commission has put out for those Art Deco buildings which are protected. And that makes interesting reading if you want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Is that only for the Bronx on their website, or do you have the
Only
whole city?
for the Bronx.
Oh,
And
Bronx, okay.
if I could find somebody who lived in Inwood that wanted to do the same thing, I would fall over myself. And there actually is a collection of Inwood buildings, but it's not a website yet, and it's just waiting to be put up. And Brooklyn too, and I went on a walking tour in Sunnyside, Queens. They're all over.
Any of the buildings that on this presentation have the same owner?
I don't know. I didn't get into the ownership of
okay.
these buildings, but I'm sure that there are landlords with multiple ownership interests.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So let's. Is Bolton Street next? Am I in? All right. All right. So now this is what talking about landlords when they were developed. I'm sure that these two buildings, they're right next to each other on Bolton Street. It's 2185 and 2185 and 2165.
Yeah.
And here again, you've got a really great example of the Art Deco style with the brick banding, the horizontal banding, the vertical banding. You've got the fire escapes, and this is, when I took this photograph in 2007, this is what the parapet looked like. And this is classic Art Deco. The cast stone pinnacles at the top are, they're evocative of nature, but they're not. They're kind of abstract forms made to look like nature. And they're beautifully kind of eccentric. They're not even balanced. And they're little bits of sculpture in themselves. The horizontal railing is very, it's the speed horizontal. Corner windows. This is again how the whole block looked in 2007. And then this is cast stone. Cast stone was a cheap way of creating sculpture. And these were made to, I suppose they were made to look like granite or something, but it's basically concrete. And they make a form and then they finish it so that it's smoother hammered. This is the fabulous lobby of that building. And if you want to see Art Deco plaster work at the finest, sneak into that lobby. These forms, these inverted waterfall forms in the corner, they're very Art Deco. The railings are modernistic. They're just very simple geometric forms. Fortunately, you can't see the wonderful detail in there. Again, it's a lobby which is being well taken care of. And this is its twin. It's exactly the same. So I imagine they were built by the same developer and were under the same ownership for the longest time. And they're still in good shape, but unfortunately they don't have their parapets anymore. And this is how they looked originally. Let's take a look at the lobby of 2165, because essentially it's the same, but it's a different experience. It's exactly the same plaster work and the shape and the staircases. You paint it kind of different colors, and it's a different space altogether. I'm not quite sure which one you prefer, that one or the other. I think I like this one better. All right. So that's a great classic Art Deco pair. Now we're going to do another pair. I'm sure that if you've never seen these, you've never driven the Bronx River Parkway or Pelham Parkway or Fordham Road. I'm sure you've all seen these. So these are Bronx Park East. They are a pair of buildings. they're only different in the shape of their cast stone entrances. And they're different now in that one of them has maintained its original parapet and the other one hasn't. This is the one which has, it's slightly better maintained, although the lobby is not quite as luxurious. This is the lobby, and you'll get a better idea of these great semicircular spaces, which I don't know what they're for. I suppose they're a place where they put the Christmas tree, but they make the lobby look grand, and at one time they might have even had furniture there. Not terrazzo floor, but wonderful tiled floor. Let's just go see if we can get to the outside. All right. This is, you must have seen this. There was a sign saying, the lawyer, Shapiro Law Office there. It used to be there forever. And they finally took it down. But when they took it down, they also took down the facade. Yeah, if you go back one before that, I think that now.
We'd have to go back to.
No, all right. So some must have dropped off here.
Here.
Oh, here we are. So here on the left is the one where the Shapiro signs used to be. There are 4 blocks. The 2 on the right still have the original parapet. These, they didn't rip out the whole parapet. At least they kind of kept some of the brick patterning below where the sculptural works. So you can do it a little bit more sensitively. And they still, they're still a force to be reckoned with. They're great. This is the other lobby. They painted this wonderful zigzag plaster gold, and it looks like Donald Trump would like. All right, here we go. All right, so that's Bronx Park East. We're getting to the end now. Getting close to the end. Here is another very important style. This is what happens later on in the Art Deco, development of the Art Deco style. The flashiness, the different color brick, the patterning becomes more muted, and in its place, they streamline everything. So you get these wonderful kind of rounded corner buildings. And this is one of the few that you find in the East Bronx. And I think that you've just discovered that it was, as we suspected, by a very important architect called Israel Craftsman. And he designed a whole bunch of buildings in this rounded corner style, and many of them are in my should be landmarked list. They are fabulous buildings. And this is one of his more modest ones, but it's still a great building. Oh, where did you find this? This is cool.
This is Times again.
Oh, yeah?
So the image in the center, the circle,
Yeah.
that's a rendering of the building.
Yeah.
And the caption says it's designed by I.L. Craftsman.
There you go. Let's go into, can we go into the lobby? Okay, so here you've got a very simple shamrock pattern terrazzo floor. Very nice. And then, but they're really cool, some of these architects. If you go to the next one here, you'll see, unfortunately you can't see it, but the little thing that separates the top and bottom rail is also in the shape of a shamrock. So they pick up, they're sensitive enough to the design. And that's, that's really super modern and simple, the way they do these aluminum handrails back in the Art Deco way. So that's a great example of the streamlined, modern style. Israel Craftsman. You can find all of his great buildings, and a lot of them are in the Grand Concourse Historic District, so they are protected, but some of his best are not. All right, okay, so here's the last one. This is what I've divided the website up into different styles, and this is a small group which I call Oddball Deco. And this is a little what is this, a 5-story walk-up? There's like 4 apartments per floor. You don't see buildings like that in the Art Deco style, and if you were to walk past it, you'd think, oh, it doesn't look like anything. But if you look closely at it, that's a really nice tax frame. If you look closely at it, all this decoration at the top is pure Art Deco. The cast stone, the fins, the aspiration, the patterns, the curved fire escapes, the brick patterning. A really terrific piece of Art Deco architecture. And it's in my should-be landmark list. All right, a modest little building like that, and that's way down at Pleasant Point. So that brings me to the end. If you liked what you saw, then you can while away a minute or two by going into the website. You'll see much more of the same kind of stuff. And the reason why I'm here is because I will tell anybody how I feel about these buildings, and they are so important that they should be protected. And I've been working with the Historic Districts Council to get them on the agenda. I'm working with other preservation groups. I've done walking tours for the Bronx County Historical Society, and tons of people show up. We did a walking tour, 30 people show up. We did another walking tour, and it was raining both times, 40 people showed up. So there's interest in the stuff. And I'm trying to spread the word about it, because unless people start to bug their representatives or get involved in the preservation fight, nothing will happen. And so that's the ultimate aim, is to make people aware of the great buildings, and make them aware of how vulnerable they are, and how really some of them are so good that they got to be landmarked.
How do you find the lobbies in Parkchester? Don't they have nice lobbies in Parkchester?
Parkchester is a kind of, I don't know what we think. Parkchester's got some great Art Deco sculpture.
Sure.
But architecturally, it's not so much Art Deco. It's kind of more, it's relatively undecorated. The decoration is mostly in the sculpture that they adorn it with. Some of the commercial buildings were more Art Deco. I think there was a movie house there one time, which had a very Art Deco facade. I used to go to the movies there. The definition is very fluid. With people on the websites, people argue all day about, is it Art Deco, isn't it Art Deco? You know what it's like. And Parkchester is kind of, Parkchester's great, mind you. I think that.
Well, sometimes on the outside of buildings, is like gargoyles or something.
Some of them have gargoyles, but they are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I thought so.
Yes, sir.
The one you showed, 601 Pelham Parkway, my brother lives there, I was just there actually earlier. You said something about a buffalo in the artwork and the tile work outside?
I gotta look closer. See a buffalo. Yeah.
Brandon lives there.
Yeah.
I think that there's somewhere. I think there was a photo that didn't get hit. But anyway,
I'm noticing a lot of the
in
Art Deco, especially
the
later.
website, you can zoom all the photographs so you can see.
In later Art Deco, they have a lot of these kind of Native American motifs.
Yeah,
Mesoamerican.
yeah, Mesoamerican, Mayan, lots of those motifs we used. They stole from everywhere. The Art Deco artists and designers. They stole from like the Cubists, and there were Italian futurists. They stole from them, and all those kind of European avant-garde styles. They were all kind of incorporated a bit, but they didn't go too far. And it became an acceptable form of modern design. People liked it. And you see it in the movies, if you like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. You see it frequently as a backdrop in their movies. The Marx Brothers used a lot of Art Deco set designs. It was used in advertising. Car design was influenced by it. So it was all over the place. It was short-lived. As I say, by the time the war broke out, after the war, it was gone as a movie.
529, the first building you started with.
Yeah.
My niece lives there.
Yeah.
The super of that building, so a lady, an older German woman.
Yeah.
She patrols those hallways.
Oh, well,
She-
you can see.
She checks everyone out. I wonder if she's the landlady. She claims she's just a super.
Yeah, she might
She
be.
gets on everyone.
But,
She
you know, they
checks
need,
on
they
everybody
need,
coming in.
buildings need something
That's why
like
that
that.
building,
Yeah.
the lobby's maintained like that.
Yes, sir.
There's a building on 7th Avenue. If you went down by there to make it right after the trestle, right before the trestle, the corner building used to be a pool. Now it's a medical.
Oh, yes, that's an
yeah.
Art Deco building.
That's
Bronxdale
That's an
Pool.
Art Deco building. Unfortunately, you know, they tried to keep some of it, but they've taken a lot of the Art Deco elements
Yeah.
out of that building.
That was Bronxdale
Yeah,
Pool or something?
yes, yeah. And you find it, you know, you find little buildings like that all over. There's a building on Cotonou Parkway, you know, in a not very good neighborhood. Used to be a bank under the 3rd Avenue L. It is now a Pentecostal church, and it's got beautiful Art Deco designs on it. You know, the people walk past it, they don't give it a second thought. But you find it in all kinds of strange and interesting places.
How about Kingsbridge Road? Doesn't that have a
Oh,
lot?
Kingsbridge, have you been to the, well, no, Fordham Road and the Concourse, have you been to the Dollar Savings Bank there?
Oh, yeah.
They have a supermarket there, which is built in the old banking hall, which is a beautiful piece of Art Deco. You can go and get your groceries in the most wonderful place. And then there's a building next to it called is it the Webster Building?
Wagner.
The Wagner
Wagner.
Building. The Wagner
Go there,
Building
Wagner.
is a complete facade of really delicate terracotta tile work. Beautiful. So it's there.
2 questions. The fact that some of the buildings don't have the parapet anymore, does that exclude them from being landmarked?
No. In the Grand Concourse Historic District, several of the most important buildings had already lost their parapets by the time they were landmarked. And even though they are in the historic district and they have protection, they can't force the landlords to put them back the way they were. And it's a great shame because some of them are really fabulous, and we have, you know, the tax photographs and other records, historical records to prove it. So.
And what was the reason for putting a fireplace there that it didn't work?
Well, it was classy. It made
So-
people think they lived in a really
Feels like
fancy
home.
place.
Yeah.
Sure.
It gave people the feeling that they'd moved up in life. Because most of these people had moved out of the ghettos and the tenements of Manhattan and the Lower East Side and the East Bronx, the South Bronx.
Yeah, because at one time, if you had a fireplace,
Yeah.
it meant you couldn't afford central heating. It was a low-class symbol.
That's right.
So you see them covered up.
Yeah. So, but they, yeah.
I noticed some of the buildings had fire escapes. When did the city stop requiring fire escapes?
Well, there are some Art Deco buildings that don't have fire escapes. And they are, but most of the buildings that the fire escapes they're all 6 stories. And you did not have to have, you had to have an elevator, but you did not have to have a fireproofed internal staircase. So the staircases couldn't be used to escape the building. They were open to the landings. And but they allowed you to put external staircases. That was the fire escape. And then, but if you went higher than 6 stories, you had to fireproof the staircases, and once you fireproof the staircases, you've enclosed them in a fireproof wall, and they got fire doors giving access to them. You didn't need the fire escapes anymore, and you'll find that the later buildings don't have them.
Is there a typical type of elevator?
The elevator, the doors were sometimes very, very nicely etched metal. But you know, the interiors, unless they were really special. If you ever get a chance to go and see the interior of the elevators of one of the great Art Deco masterpieces, which is the Chrysler Building, if you ever sneak into the Chrysler Building and go into the elevators there, you'll see the most wonderful Art Deco marquetry. So it was high and low. It was the grandest, and it was for the working people too.
Is there funding to restore the parapets?
There are some funds, but they don't go where they should, and they're never enough. You know, I mean, essentially, there has to be some kind of way of raising money from the New York City real estate industry, which makes billions of dollars, even though its buildings are half empty, of kind of squeezing them to kind of donate to funds like that. That's the only way you're going to raise money. You can't ask people to pay more taxes when there are more important things to do. And you've got to try and put it on the landlords. And if you landmark them, then they do have a little bit of, you know, and landmarking it sometimes doesn't protect buildings. Landlords frequently ignore them and then get into fights, and you know, then nothing gets done. But it's the best tool we have right now.
There are programs to replace cornices and would take out the metal or the stone and use fiberglass. And there's programs I've seen that, I know they did some at City College where they used kind of fiberglass concrete to replace some of the gargoyles.
Yeah.
That were crumbling away.
Well, you know,
There is money from the city, I believe, for some of the
yeah.
parapet replacement,
Yeah.
but it's hard to come by.
Yeah.
One other question I had though, when I first started studying these Art Deco buildings, what struck me is how many of them were built in the 1930s.
Yes.
And we have this impression of the 1930s as being the Great Depression.
I know. It's
Everybody
crazy.
out of work,
Crazy, isn't it?
you know, but the Bronx seemed to be booming.
Well, I think that the Depression happened kind of in two phases. There was a bit of a bounce by 34, 35. And I think that there were ways of pumping money into the economy that the government was doing. They weren't making a lot of noise about it, but there were some subsidies given to developers, and I'm sure that there were some tax break programs. But the early ones, the ones that were built in the early 30s, I'm sure that they were started before the Wall Street crash. The Park Plaza, the one opposite Yankee Stadium, which is where the Art Deco landmarking started for apartment buildings, is a fabulous building. That was started in 1927. They nearly finished it, and it burnt down. And then they rebuilt it, and then the crash happened. But you know, you've got a brand new building there. You can't just walk away from it. And you know, for a while they stood empty, those buildings, and eventually they rented them. But the ones that you see built in the later 30s, I think, were part of that bounce. Because there is like a gap. If you look in the website, you see, you know, quite a few in the early Deco period up to 1932. Then you don't see too much until 35, 36, 37. And about the data, most of the data that is in the website about who the architect is and when the buildings were built comes from a fabulous collection that was put together by a couple of academics at Hunter College in 1976. And I'm sure you remember 1976. The Bronx was falling to pieces and it was being burnt out. And these were city planning students who were worried back then about saving the Art Deco heritage of the Bronx, because they were afraid they were going to be consumed by fire. And they had teams of people, and they went out and they made a whole list. And back then you could go into the building department and ask to see the plans, and they had their students go in there. It's the only way they could have amassed all this information. And they supply most of the data, and I think that there's something like 280 buildings in their list. And it was only on the West Bronx for who the architect was and the year it was built. So, you know, people were interested back then, and then, you know, then the Bronx did burn down. And then people were more interested about them rebuilding it. But I think that, again, you know, with the establishment of the Grand Concourse Historic District for a while, Ferdinand Ferrer was the borough president back then. He backed it. It became a thing that you could do politically. I don't know whether you could do it today. I don't know whether it's not on anybody's agenda. It's not a priority in terms of the way the city is suffering. And it may have to wait its time, but eventually, you know, maybe we can save a few.
So, just to expand on this question about the building in the Bronx, my grandfather lived in the Bronx and bought a house at that time.
Yeah.
And what he told me about the Bronx was, it was affordable, the land was cheap, and the trades came.
Yes,
And
the
Yankee
trades,
Stadium
yeah.
came.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
it,
yeah.
it was just
That
that
gave
period
it
of
was-
time that.
And then the
that-
Grand Concourse was there, that was supposed to be the Champs-Élysées
Yeah, yeah.
of the Bronx, and that all kind of gave it a huge boost. Yeah, yeah, there's a great book, it's called The Boulevard of Dreams, I recommend it. And it's a history of that part of the Bronx. And that period of the Bronx, and up until the white flight started, the West Bronx was basically part of the Jewish diaspora. It was 80% Jewish. And the residents, the building owners, most of the architects you'll find, and that's part of the Bronx history, which is kind of again disappearing far too quickly. People don't have memories of that time. Okay, well, thank you all for your patience in listening to me. Again, going to the website, I make various collections, and I'm going to make a collection of the ones that I've showed you here tonight, if you want to go back and familiarize yourself. And they will be called the East Bronx History Forum Presentation Collection. And that'll go up in a couple of days.
Thank you.